could you speculate as to why things have moved so quickly? When Alastair was just saying the same, you're saying that often, traditionally, these things take much longer to work their way out. Why the speed with this one?
I think there are a number of issues. Number one, we can't ignore the fact there's a by-election on Thursday. A Labour seat, Batley and Spen, the Conservatives are hoping to take it. To what extent is this damage limitation? The other thing is we are still in the middle of a pandemic, and trust in this government is an incredibly important thing. And so the number 10, maintaining the trust of the government is important. Having one of its main faces of those rules, breaking those rules, just is very untenable. And then I think a third reason is, of course, what Matt Hancock laid out in his resignation letter, that he needs to spend time with his family, that he's feeling that the toll, the public toll, the pressure is becoming too much. He said that he needs to spend more time with his family at this very difficult time in that opening to his resignation letter earlier today. And I wonder what more we are yet to learn in the Sunday papers tomorrow.
Thank you, Tom. Alastair, trust in government, how significantly it has it been eroded by these most recent events involving Mr. Hancock?
I think Hancock and COVID and the pandemic has struck the biggest body blow to that notion of confidence. I was very struck by something that you said earlier on about don't do as I say, do as I do. And if you think of the great leaders, and I know this will divide opinion immediately, but in my humble opinion, Margaret Thatcher and Tony Blair were both great leaders. And even on something like the war with Tony Blair, he still felt that it was what was right to do, and he walked the walk as well as talked the talk. Thatcher genuinely believed that people should live within their means and should be frugal, and that the government would try and do the same, and walked the walk as well as talking the talk. Matt Hancock has done, as you eloquently put it earlier, the perfect reverse of it. Lectured to us, even done the signs at those dreadful Downing Street press conferences, and done the quite opposite. Can I just add one thing to Tom's brilliant on-the-spot report there about people getting concerned and worried and so on? The other event, Saturday night for Sunday papers, is on Thursday, the Batley and Spen by-election. By-elections are a crucial measure, a barometer, if you will, of everything that you and Tom were just saying, because the general election won't be for another 3 years at most, but maybe even sooner than that, but certainly not for a wee while. You've got Chesham and Amersham that went badly for the Tories. They should have held that one. Batley and Spen, not least because George Galloway is in there batting for the left against Labour, so Labour's grip is looking a bit slippy. Tories really thought they were in with a chance of getting one back there, and this was not doing them any good at all. Go on Saturday, rebuild the fires on Sunday, you've then got 3 days to try. And other candidates are available in Batley and Spen, we should obviously say.
At such a time, when the country is still within a pandemic, however you read that, is it surprising that there hasn't been a simultaneous announcement of a replacement?
No, that doesn't surprise me, because the other rumour that caught my eye last night and this morning from some of the great thinkers of the political world is the cleverest thing to do right now is give it a couple of days and then bring the reshuffle forward. Bring in some bright young things. I mean, there's people like Tracy Crouch, who was in government, left because of ill health and to have her baby. She's ready to come back in. There are people I had on my own programme, Penny Mordaunt, Paymaster General at the moment, former Defence Secretary, stick her back up again. So there are a lot of, and they're women, which for the Tories is an important signal as well, particularly in the context of a scandal of this nature, trusted, bright, able women. And final point on this, a lot of people I know are already talking about the successor, and that's Nadhim Zahawi. Now there's a case that really underlines your brilliant comment at the beginning about do the business, don't just talk about it. Nadhim Zahawi has, with a brilliant team of people, run the vaccination programme pretty well from start to finish. Kate Bingham, the business person, was the one who put it all together cleverly. The Oxford University academics, the scientists and business people at AstraZeneca, Pfizer, and what have you, they've done the hard work. The minister, and a lesser figure, would have been there beating the drum and showing off day in, day out. Barely saw him, Nadhim. Got on with the job, and I suspect he may well be the new Secretary of State.
Alastair, we've now got, I'm hearing, we can go live to our political editor, Darren McCaffrey. Darren, what reaction so far?
Well, first of all, Neil, let's take you through the letters that we've received in the last, 10, 20 minutes or so. First of all, from Matt Hancock, his resignation letter to Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, in which he talks about how he didn't want his private life to become a distraction, he says, from the single-minded focus that is leading the country through this crisis. He wants to reiterate, he says in his letter to Boris Johnson, his apology for breaking the guidance, apologise to his family and loved ones for putting them through this. He also says that he needs to be with his children at this time, and that is why he has handed in his resignation, but wants to thank, essentially, potentially, the Prime Minister for his unwavering support and leadership as they've worked together through this awful crisis. In addition to that, obviously, the Prime Minister has written Neil a letter back to the Health Secretary in which he says he's sorry to receive it. This is from Boris Johnson. He says that he should be immensely proud of his service, that I'm grateful for your support and believe your contribution to public service is far from over. So quite, in terms of tone, a letter there from the Prime Minister that, is quite forgiving in many ways. Why has Matt Hancock felt the need to resign on this? Well, first of all, this is a story with consequence. And interestingly, actually, he has sent out a Twitter video in the last couple of minutes in which he makes the case that those, he says, that make the rules have got to stick by them, and that's why he's resigned. And that gets to the nub of this, is that there has been this constant sense over the last 48 hours that it is one rule for those potentially in charge and another rule for the rest of us, that those that essentially are making the rules can no longer go on breaking them. And that's really quite difficult for the government, quite toxic. It is clearly a message that, caused an awful lot of damage with Dominic Cummings last year. The thought process within government had been that Cummings probably should have resigned, and it was a mistake that he didn't last year. And I think, given that MPs would have been receiving letters from constituents pretty angry about the hypocrisy, in essence, when it comes to Matt Hancock, the Health Secretary, the man who's been telling us for the last 16 months to abide by the rules, that he himself has admittedly broken them, that is not a good message, and one that they think is clearly politically damaging. And in addition to this, Neil, we don't know what's going to come out tomorrow. This is a story that has clearly dominated the news over the last 2 days or so. I'm sure the Sunday papers have been digging into this. There may well be more revelations in those papers tomorrow, and they clearly feel the need in some ways to nip this story in the bud. As you guys have been pointing out, there is that by-election next week. And there has been a sense, I think, within government, and even those that are quite friendly towards the government, saying at certain points ministers do need to take responsibility for their actions. They do need to, on a matter of principle, that when they have messed up, when they have broken the rules, that they need to accept that and they need to resign. Many disappointed that Matt Hancock didn't make this decision yesterday and allowed this to drag out for quite so long period of time.
Our social media is flooded with very angry members of the public, people, talking about the hypocrisy of it and reiterating, the sense that in which trust has been broken here. Does the government survive this? Should the government survive this?
Yeah, the government, of course, will. And one of the reasons, of course, managing these things is that, you try and put a firewall up. The minister has now resigned, having broken those rules. But yeah, of course, the public are angry. And as I said, we saw that last year, didn't we, with Dominic Cummings' infamous visit to Bernard Castle. And there was a sense that the government made the wrong call on that they allowed Dominic Cummings to remain in position. At the end of the day, we are still in a society, in a world, in this country, in which people are being told to abide by rules. Many rules, of course, that people do not want to abide by. They don't like them. They know that they have to because it's the right thing to do. And yet you've got someone who has been going on television, turning up at press conferences repeatedly, time and again, asking us, pleading with us, telling us to abide by those rules, and yet he himself has been proven to break them. And as you say, that really does undermine trust, not just in the government, but in the rules themselves. And that is why he's obviously felt the need to resign. The argument yesterday was that this was a private matter. Neil, clearly it's not. It's not a private matter because in that affair that he clearly was having with his aide, he was breaking the rules. Where does this lead next? Well, clearly, as you guys have been speculating, there is going to have to be a replacement. Michael Gove has been much talked about as replacing Matt Hancock as Health Secretary. I think the government would hope that was going to be in a reshuffle a couple of months down the line. Clearly, that has come quite a lot sooner. Michael Gove is a very capable cabinet minister, who needs to take control of a department that, to say, is quite stretched at the moment in this crisis. You've also talked about Nadeem Zahawi, who's proved a very effective vaccine minister, a junior minister. Now, he's not served in the cabinet level of government before. That would be a massive step up for him. It's possible it might well happen. But given the fact that, as we're in the middle of a pandemic still, that we are seeing infections continue to rise, there are questions, of course, about how long these rules might well stay in place. I think that Boris Johnson will appoint someone who's already in the cabinet.
Can I chip in? Hi, Darren. We saw each other this morning and getting quite about our business. One or two people suggesting privately off the record, bring Jeremy Hunt back, played a blinder on the Health Select Committee, clean pair of hands. Maybe that would help a wee bit?
Possible. Of course, he was Britain's longest serving Health Secretary, hasn't he been? He's clearly was a very capable cabinet minister. He's chair currently of the Health Select Committee. I mean, a bigger question is whether he would want to come into government under those guises. We don't know what the relationships are, but that's not necessarily a bad punt. I think at the end of the day, and we heard this from Lord Hague yesterday, William Hague, of course, former Foreign Secretary, former Conservative leader, he was making the case, not necessarily that Matt Hancock shouldn't resign on the issue, but is this the right time to be changing the Health Secretary, as I say, given where we are still in this public health crisis? And that will be, I would have thought, that will weigh heavily on the decision that the Prime Minister makes. To simply put someone in place who's not used to dealing with a big department, and a department that, frankly, is at the forefront of this crisis, that what you want is a capable, safe pair of hands. And as you say, Jeremy Hunt, maybe not necessarily a bad guess or a bad punt. I would kind of probably put my money on Michael Gove. But, of course, when you move people around, that has consequences for other departments too. But clearly, Matt Hancock tonight is having to deal with a personal crisis at home. Interesting in his statement, isn't it, that he talked about having to spend more time with his children. There are two families involved in this, we have to remember, and this is all in the public glare. It must be a very difficult time for them. Matt Hancock brought this on himself. Many Conservative MPs tonight, though, will be relieved that, as they say it, he's done the decent thing, he's done the right thing in terms of the government, and accepted responsibility. As he said himself in his video tonight, those that make the rules should not be allowed to break the rules.